And a good Cowboy Thursday morning, Eagle fans. It is Cowboy Week here on Birds 365. It's Cowboy Week throughout the Delaware Valley. And got a little bit of a late start to Cowboy Week this week since people were bemoaning the beatdown the Eagles took at the hands of the 49ers. But I think everyone is in true Cowboy mode as we get that much closer to a Johnny Mac favorite Sunday Night Football. Nothing Johnny Mac likes better than Sunday Night Football for the Philadelphia Eagles.
It's probably a little bit better than Monday Night Football. I'll say that.
I give you that much.
The Thursday Night Football, that's interesting. Do I prefer Sunday night or probably Thursday night? So I'd say second worst possibility.
Second worst. And they usually kick Monday. I know we're talking 5 minutes here, but they kick Monday Night Football about 8:15, and Sunday a little later, 8:25. I know we're splitting hairs just and whining about the time the actual play on the field is going to be much more important. Well, the play you're going to get here on Birds 365 is kind of good news, bad news. You can make that determination for yourself. You get more Mac and Mac today. Our buddy Jeff Kerr, who Monday could not join us because of technical issues. He's technically under the weather right now. He texted me at 3 o'clock in the morning and said, yeah, Jody, chances are I'm tapping out. I haven't slept but 20 minutes all night long, and this is at 3 a.m. And oftentimes at 3 a.m., I'd be taking that text live, but I was sound asleep when he texted me at 3 a.m. and he just texted me.
Oh, that's bad when you get the text at 3 a.m.
Yeah, I got it, but I didn't know about it till I took a look at it when I came downstairs to turn on my computer and everything at around 6:45. So I said, just text us back, yay or nay, even though you're leaning toward nay. Oh, he texted back nay. He said, I've slept for all of 20 minutes, and that was about 6:45. So no Jeff Carr today. Johnny suggested that it might be the fact that he's sick of what happened to the Eagles.
No, I'm sure he's sick, but it was either, he probably can't get over the loss, or I did see he tweeted out or X'd out or posted out, whatever the hell it's called now, the Eagles' numbers against the Blitz yesterday for the season, which are not good. And, Philadelphia, they did not take that well. So he might be sick over that as well.
Now, I didn't see that tweet, so you got to give us more details. When the Eagles are blitzed, or when the Eagles are blitzing?
When the Eagles are blitzing. So the baby of all Eagles fans, the can do no wrong. That's what you got to do. Blitz, blitz, blitz. Angelo Cataldo is back on WIP. Comes on with Dan Cilio here. He's blitz, blitz, blitz. Opposing quarterbacks. You ready for this, Jody?
I know it. I know what Purdy's numbers were this weekend.
Yeah, well, Brock was
10-11. Birds 365.
This is the whole season.
For the year. Yes, please share with the year.
Opposing quarterbacks are 92 of 132. That's 69.7%, essentially 70%, for 1,002 yards, 8 touchdowns, no interceptions, 114.2 passer rating. That is the highest passer rating against the Blitz in the NFL, and the second highest completion percentage. That's your Philadelphia Eagles when they blitz. And people got to put that in the rear view stinking mirror. They really need to put that in the rear view mirror. They don't have players to blitz. They don't have the scheme to blitz. And the worst part about it, if you want to criticize Sean Desai for something, and this is our buddy Paul Domowitch, who does a tremendous job with the numbers as well, I would criticize him for pushing the panic button, because he's blitzed more against Buffalo and San Francisco than he has all season, and it gets worse and worse and worse. As you mentioned, Purdy was 10 of 11 for 213 yards and 3 touchdowns against the Blitz.
Yeah.
Josh Allen was 13 for 17 for 164 yards when the Eagles blitzed. And those were the 2 highest games they blitzed by percentage this year. And they keep getting worse and worse and worse. Last year, against the guy that everyone hates, Eagles had a 77.3 opponent passer rating when blitzing. They did it. They did it more. They did it more judiciously in better spots, and they were more effective. Now they're doing it because they can't stop anyone, and it becomes worse, and the snowball starts rolling down the hill. And believe me, I hate this, Jody, because
You hate the Fangio defense.
well, I don't like the Fangio defense, but if there's one defense I don't like even more, it's the cover two. I think people figured it out years ago. But it's also, the worm has kind of turned, because back when Tony Dungy did it and everyone copied Tony Dungy, now we're seeing the same thing with Vic Fangio. Everybody copies Vic Fangio, and then there's a tipping point. Now, if you go back to cover two, nobody plays it as much anymore. Everybody plays it at some point. But if you look at the talent on this team, and Shaq Leonard really drove it home for me, because as he arrived, and I got to meet him yesterday, Matt Eberflus, Indianapolis, cover two, big, long, lengthy linebacker. Same thing with Zach Cunningham. Nick Sirianni brought up the Jim Boeheim 2-3 zone in college basketball to compare those two guys and their length and angles in the passing game as coverage players. James Bradbury, one of the best zone cover corners in the NFL. You have a young safety who's making some mistakes now in Reed Blankenship. You have new players, Kevin Byard and Shaq. Even Bradley Roby, guys who've come in season. Communication's been an issue. But Barrett said it yesterday. Barrett also ticked up. Kiss, keep it simple, stupid. They should be scaling back and playing more cover two. And I guarantee the Eagles defense gets better. Will they do it? They love this scheme. They love it.
Right. So I don't think they'll be moving off it anytime soon. And for that week that our boy Nicholas Morrow got the 3 sacks. That was the only effective blitz week the Eagles really had all year long, that they actually made it work because it wasn't expected at that time. You have to try and catch the other team off guard when you come with a blitz, and the Eagles just haven't been able to do that. So, yeah, the mantra of please blitz more isn't working for them this year, and I don't see any reason why it would turn around anytime soon. So they're going to have to get it done with their standard Fangio defense. And you did mention Reed Blankenship, and I had him written down as one of my notes today. Everybody in this town loves Reed Blankenship for several different reasons. Number one, undrafted free agent, the underdog. Philadelphia loves it. The undrafted free agent who got all of a $5,000 signing bonus. Oh, everybody loves it. He's the underdog. I got to love him here. He does play really hard. And as you've told us, others have told us, he's amazing that after the game, he looks like he could go shoot a GQ cover model spot. That he just
never sweats, perfectly coiffed. You and I don't have to worry about that.
Goes out, plays his with his heart on his sleeve, and then comes back and looks great doing it. So a lot of people like Reed Blankenship for non-football thing, not actually what he does on the field. I don't want to say he's playing badly, but he's going to, and rightfully so, be compared to CJGJ last year, who tied for the league lead in interceptions. Blankenship has 2. He doesn't have a forced fumble this year. He hasn't recovered a fumble. He's gotten 2 INTs. His tackling is good. It's solid. It's not like he's separating guys from the ball. He had the one great tackle against the Cowboys where he pulled down the tight end right on the half-yard line. That was his biggest play of the year. It was a great one. Don't want to minimize it.
Don't forget the one on the sideline where he got his hand or forearm under and turned a what was that, McLaurin, I think, and turned
against the Commanders. Yep.
That what would have been a catch into a non-catch and maybe won that game. So he's made some big plays. And you mentioned the Cowboys game as well. That was a great tackle, right? I mean, smack dab at the goal line. That was a great tackle. He's played well, but yeah, every once in a while you see some of the issues in coverage. So that dichotomy of CJ, who's one of the best covered safeties in football, and he's not healthy, and the lines would be even better with him.
Mm-hmm.
It's different. It's sort of, Deron Bland's, and I was talking about Bland with AJ Brown yesterday. He's having just a phenomenal year. I mean, how many pick six does he have now? It's absurd.
Record
5.
setting, most ever in the history of the National Football
Yeah.
League in one season.
So I would recommend don't throw an out route on Deron Bland, but you can beat him, and you saw it last week with DK Metcalf with double moves and physicality, and the Eagles have that with AJ Brown. But anyway, you know me, I like my baseball, basketball analogies. I always compare it to the home run hitter. It's like CJ's a home run hitter, man. He's the cleanup hitter. He's the 40 home run guy. He's going to make big plays. That's what Deron Bland does. Reed Blankenship is more of a do your job, quiet, effective player. But you need a few of those playmakers,
right? That you were. That's exactly where I was going, John. He could be what Reed Blankenship is, and he could be perfectly fine. But you need someone to be a home run hitter in your lineup. It's fine. You lose a home run hitter. That's okay if everybody else picks up and hits home runs. They don't have that other guy right now, even though.
And I would compare Reed to Marcus Epps. He's Marcus Epps. He's the steady guy. And then you need the other guy who's making plays. And it might be like Bland's a corner. And the Cowboys lost Trayvon Diggs, who's also that guy. So it's amazing that they lost one of those and were able to immediately get one in another direction. The Eagles haven't been able to do that. Kevin Byard has a history of doing it earlier in his career, but he's not the same player that he was earlier in his career in Tennessee. And that's the thing. And Eagles fans are going to figure that out quickly with Shaq Leonard. The resume says 3-time All-Pro. Well, guess what, guys? You're not getting the 3-time All-Pro on December 6th, wherever we are, off the street. Right. It doesn't work that way. It is what it is.
Somebody's got to step up a little bit more, because I don't know about you, John, and I don't know how this is going to play. Going into last week's game against the Niners, I look at this every single week. Sometimes it's a huge factor. Sometimes it's a complete non-factor. And surprisingly, last week's game, it turned out to be a complete non-factor. The number one team in the National Football League, plus minus, and I'm not talking about point differential, I'm talking about turnovers, in the National Football League, is the San Francisco 49ers. They're plus 11 for the year. And the Eagles came into the game at -2, which is 19th of the 32 teams. So it's you note it, you make a mental note of it. You can't prepare for it. You can't pencil it in. We're going to do something to get turnover. It just doesn't work that way. But it also is a stat that you got to look at and incorporate in. There were no turnovers last week. As bad as that game was, you would think that there'd be something in there that was a key turn of the game, and it was a turn of none. Eagles and 49ers played to a 0-0 draw. The Cowboys are the fourth best team at turnovers in the National Football League with 8. And, you mentioned Deron Bland with the 5 pick six. Not only did they get the ball, but they turn it immediately into points, and the Eagles are still -2 for the season. If they lose the turnover battle this week, it's going to be hard for them to go into Dallas and win. So they have to take very good care of the football. Who's going to make a play? Who's going to be the Eagle defender, be it a fumble or an interception, that could be the difference in this game if it comes down to who makes the big play, who gets the turnover in the key spot?
Boy, you have to go with the most obvious. It's probably going to be Slay or Bradbury if it comes. But yeah, I mean, if you think about where the Eagles were at the beginning of last year till, basically the first half of the season, where they were that team, the 49ers, the plus, and I forget the exact number, but it was absurd how many. And we kept talking, this can't continue. I just can't. And sure enough, it didn't. And it's really been more of a even Steven type deal since that day, since that week. when things started to turn. And that's not good enough. And that's something the Eagles have been stressing for a while. But look, I don't, we talked about those 5 starters a lot in the off season. I mean, it's meaningful. They got worse at least, let's see, at least 3 positions, both linebacker spots and one of the safety spots. And you could argue Reed Blankenship and Marcus Epps are a wash. You might even say Reed's a little bit better, but I will say that about Marcus Epps, Reed's already missed 2 games. Marcus was out there for every stinking snap. That's meaningful, especially when it comes to the communication on this defense. And then with Javon and Jalen Carter, I'm the biggest Jalen Carter fan in the world. And I think overall the Eagles got a little bit better. But here we are in game 13, right at the so-called rookie wall. This is when college players are generally done. They had got the bowl game, but they're not used to playing much more. We've seen the snaps go up. And then there's the veteran aspect of it. As talented as Jalen Carter is, he's not as savvy as Javon Hargrave. He's not as good when it comes to situational football, and that'll come as he gets more experience. So you could make an argument they got worse at all 5 positions. I think that's being a little bit harsh, but I also think it does prove that it ain't easy replacing players that were on the number 2 defense in the NFL. And I think we're seeing that.
And as we just talked about with Reed Blankenship, about what he brings to the table, the type of player that he is, as in comparison, you said better to compare him to Epps than to CJGJ. Well, if he's their best safety, and last year's Eagles' best safety was CJGJ, I think you got to compare those 2. Same thing with Hargrave and Carter on the line. I know he's had a phenomenal year. He's probably going to get Defensive Rookie Player of the Year. You'll accuse me of overrating sacks again, but Javon Hargrave got sacks. Carter's great for pressures, and the fact that he beats his man off the defensive line, you would think would help others get home. If he's not getting home, okay, fine. So long as somebody's getting home. Last year I know was an anomaly, but they're not close to as many sacks as they had last year. Part of it is, Hargrave used to beat his man and he'd get home. Carter doesn't do that, and apparently it's not helping the other guys get home because the drop-off in sacks has been pretty precipitous. So there can be a domino effect when you're talking about the players who play together in a group like the Eagles defensive line. And as you pointed out, for those who just tuned in, the answer is not the blitz, because when the Eagles, they've had 1 good blitzing game. That was Nicholas Morrow, 3 sacks in 1 game. That's it. Out of 12 games, they've had 1 good blitzing game. Other games, it's either been no factor and or a major mistake trying to blitz Brock Purdy last week. He lit them up like a Christmas tree, pardon the seasonal pun, but that's exactly what happened. Yeah, this defense has got to find it within themselves.
And by the way, Jody, I was looking at some of the comments, which is my fault, for Jeff's post when he put the blitz out there, put the blitz numbers out there for the Philadelphia Eagles this season. And it's a bunch of, oh yeah, but his blitzes are elementary. They mostly do it, and hey, they're not doing it right. They're not. It's always something else, Jody. It's always, just admit you're wrong. Just admit you're wrong. Everybody's wrong. I'm wrong. Jody's wrong at times. We're all wrong at times. You don't have to go down with the ship. Lawrence Taylor ain't walking through that door. They don't blitz well. Get over it. Do something else.
Oh, by the way, if I had Lawrence Taylor, it would probably cause me to blitz less, because I believe he's going to get. He's part of my front 4. And oh, by the way, I don't need a blitz because Lawrence is going to get there anyway. I understood the point you were trying to make, but just it's funny because I had a Lawrence Taylor conversation this past weekend about is he the greatest linebacker of all time, and I said in his day he was. Today he wouldn't be a linebacker.
No,
He'd be an
he
edge
wouldn't.
player.
Yeah, he
He'd
would.
be Hassan Reddick. I know they still, you look Hassan Reddick after the game, how he's listed in the box score. It's as a linebacker. He's not a linebacker. He's an edge
No, he's
player.
an edge rusher.
Right.
And yeah, you're right. Lawrence would be. So, we generally, people that cover the league, break it down to edge versus off ball. And off ball is Mike and weak side. They're all off the ball. And that's the Fred Warners, those types of great linebackers. And yeah, it's a completely different game. Well, that's another part of the problem. It's a completely different game, and there's way too many people that, and I'm with you. I don't like it. Mike Gill and I have this discussion all the time. We've had it many times when I'm on the air locally in South Jersey. When talking about the Fangio scheme, which Jody, I'm not a fan of, but I also recognize, and it's similar with the tush push and Jason Kelsey's comments about Roger Goodell trying to ban it. All right, ban it. We're going to figure it out. This is the reality of the modern NFL. I don't like it, but you got to play with the rules in front of you,
Right?
And nobody's been more successful at that over the past 2 years than the Philadelphia Eagles. So the sky is not falling. They lost a game. It was a bad game. It's a week-to-week league. You don't make grandiose decisions because they played one bad game. But when it comes to the old school mentality of blitz and run the football and the guys showing up with the run the football, I mean, guys, you got to give it up. You got to give it up. You build the team, follow the money. You build the team. A.J. Brown's on the team. Devontae Smith's on the team. Dallas Goedert's coming back. He's going to play on the team. This is what your offense is built on. Jalen Hurts. They're not going to sit the ball and run the ball like they have Earl Campbell. They're not. Now, if it were 1980 and I had Lawrence Taylor and Earl Campbell, yeah, knock yourself out. It's a different game. And I don't know. People have to recognize.
Yeah, but yesterday, I'll tell you, John, I had no problems with the guys who showed up with the sign down in South Philadelphia. Now, it all comes into your own interpretation of what they meant and what the point they were trying to make. Off the game against the 49ers this past week, where the running backs had as few carries as they did, I got no problem. The offensive coordinator stepped up after the game himself and said, yeah, we got to be more patient. We did. We got away from the running game. Now, at some point, the score kind of dictates that the run comes out of your playbook.
Yes.
But that wasn't until late third quarter when you're down that much. So you had 3 quarters to establish the run, and they didn't. So on this given week, if you're talking about just in general, week in, week out, over the course of the season, are we going back to Earl Campbell days? No, of course we're not. That's not the National
Maybe
Football
he didn't
League.
have enough. Maybe he didn't have enough room on the poster board. But if he said, run the ball effectively, I'd say, all right, yeah, that's an argument I can get behind. You got to run the ball more effectively. So I ended up, because this became a big thing. So at the end of the third quarter, because I get this question every week from Seth, at the end of the third quarter, and I've said it to you, and I've said it to Mike, and I've said it to everybody I've been on the air with over the past 15 years, run pass ratio. Tell me what the score is in the fourth quarter. I'll tell you what the damn run pass ratio is. They entered the fourth quarter down 28-13. These same people. Now, I think they threw the ball 20 times. I'd have to add it up. They threw the ball 20 times and ran it 3 times in the fourth quarter. It's going to skew things, right?
Right.
Well, you're down, and you're eventually down 3 scores. Imagine that they were down 28-13. They came out the next drive and they ran the football 6 times. These same fans would be incensed.
Sure.
As the clock was siphoned.
What the hell, Siri? Can he see the scoreboard from the sideline?
Yeah.
We're down 15 points.
As the clock siphons down. I mean, it's at one point they were wholly ineffective, as Jason Kelsey pointed out. And they need to be more effective running the football. And those are the real conversations. Why are they not as effective running the football over the past number of weeks as they were earlier in the season? That to me is a legitimate discussion. They were not effective running the football. So at one point it was 65-35. That's not even bad when you can't run it. That's okay. And then came the fourth quarter, and then it gets wildly askewed. To me, this is the most common sense thing in the world, and I can't believe people can't wrap their heads around it. If they're up 3 scores this weekend in the fourth quarter in Dallas, which is very unlikely, but if they're up 3 scores, people are going to say, see, they ran the ball, as they run it 20 times in the fourth quarter versus 3 pass because they have a 3-score lead. Yeah, it drives me insane. One of the
But
many things.
you just sparked a thought for me. And I think I meant to ask you this about 2-3 weeks ago, and I didn't. I apologize. So now that I'm thinking about it, I'm going to ask you right now. Just in general, you may know this off the top of your head. You probably don't. I don't. I should just as much as you. Playing with pace, which means no huddle.
Tempo, yeah.
Tempo. Get up to the line ASAP. You can do it at times. Again, that old scoreboard wasn't real kind to the Eagles last week. Dictates when you're going to play with pace and go no huddle, but you can do it at any time. There's no rules against it, and there are teams that use it more than other teams in the league. And I thought last year the Eagles were pretty effective at using it efficiently. Borrow the word you just used about the Eagles running game. They're pretty damn efficient when they played with pace and hustled up to the line of scrimmage and went no huddle. They've done very little of that this year. Very little. That they've just decided they're going to try and keep the other team's defense on the field, not let them sub. You have to have faith in your team as a unit, that they're all on the same page, and Jalen to be able to immediately call the plays. And they've done very little of that this year. Why do you think that's the case?
I don't think they've done. They usually use tempo at some point in every game. In fact, that's when they.
You think that's an inaccurate statement I'm making in comparison to last year?
I don't think they've used
much
it
less.
I don't think they've used it much less. I think they've been in closer games generally, so I think that affects it. I think they use more tempo than most teams. I would say that.
Really, I would disagree with that too.
If they and I'm not talking about end of game situations where
you have to do it, doesn't count. I'm talking about first 3 quarters games yet to be decided.
One of the things I noticed early in the season was the Eagles would occasionally go with a silent count at home, and I'm like, that's weird. And I ultimately asked Nick, and I said, I saw Cam Jurgens, tapping Kelsey's butt. That's the Eagles use the right guard for their silent counts at home. And I'm like, why is that going on? And he said, basically when we use tempo, we had some issues in year 1 with some pre-snap penalties. But remember, they had a bunch of penalties when Nick first got here. It was a big story. So they had a bunch of pre-snap penalties, and for whatever reason, guys weren't communicating effectively in those type situations, and they were making too many of those pre-snap mistakes. So they went to the silent count even at home when they used tempo. Not all the time, but at times. And anyway, that's the reason. Long story short, but they use tempo a lot compared to most teams early in the game. Early, and I would say first half. They'll use it, and they use it generally when they're slogging, and they used it. So in this game, as an example, their first 2 drives were pretty good. So they usually, when they struggle, they usually go to tempo. But I would say overall, like motion, the Eagles don't motion compared to other teams. But tempo, I would say, in non-hurry up situations and non-obvious situations, And it's tough to get those numbers, but I would
was
say
gonna
they
say,
use it more
there
than
even a
most.
place you could look up those
No,
numbers.
no.
Yeah, because just in general, you and I have a different belief, and yeah, I try and do watch a lot of other football games. I have to because I'm on the air on a national show. Yeah, I think I would not say the Eagles would even be in the top half of the NFL in using tempo in non-score dictated games where you're either well ahead or well behind. Well, what we have this week is the Dallas Cowboys, and the Eagles have a chance to do something they haven't done in a decade, which is sweep the Cowboys in the season series. It was only a couple of weeks ago that they beat the Cowboys in a game that kind of hung in the balance last week here. I want to get into it with John a little bit more about the actual matchup between these two things. There are things that favor the Eagles and things that favor the Cowboys. And right now, speaking of favored, Cowboys are 3.5-point choice. Back-to-back weeks, the Eagles have been underdog. People were in a lather last week when they were an underdog to the 49ers at home, and we now know what the final score is. I wonder if it bothers you as much that they're underdog against the Cowboys this week. McMullen, McDonald, your Mac and Mac guys, talking Eagles-Cowboys here on Birds 365.